Ken's Good Vibes Podcast. Hello. Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of episode 2 of Ken's Good Vibes Podcast. Bringing you the music section. What is your favorite type of music, or what type of music do you like? And also, what is your favorite form of entertainment? What entertains you? Now, I wanted to mention that earlier in the first episode of Ken's Good Vibes Podcast, I had made it a point to let you guys know that it's going to be happening 1 hour each Sunday. I am going to be, I'd like to be able to do it each Sunday. I have a few other things that I have going on throughout the week or weeks, and also dealing with work, as well as, getting things done around the house. So I've decided that it's going to be each alternate Sunday. All right. So again, each alternate Sunday, I will be creating an episode either in one whole part or 2 parts. All right, guys. Well, let's jump into it. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up there that you're aware of that change. Okay, but still going to be driving through here, powering through, talking to you guys. Here we go. Let's jump into it. Oh, guys, music. It's a very big delight to have in our lives, and I know I enjoy listening to it quite extensively, as, you probably heard me say that before, but if not, I really do. It's just a fascinating thing. I remember when I was in the Art Institute at that time, we had our health class in which, we had to take as an elective before, I had to take so many electives. So in that class, we had to do a report in which we analyzed one part of the human body and how it was affected or stimulated by what we were majoring in. And so I had thought, to myself that in my major, I went for game art and design, and in that major, music plays a huge role in game design and sound design, for that matter. It really helps tell the story of something without using words. That's one of the amazing things I find with music, is that you can listen to a story and it's so beautifully composed. Sometimes that's all you really need in order to be able to listen to that story and, move with the rhythms and the beats and so many other things. By no means am I a music professional, but I sure love listening to it. Back in the year 2014, which was my graduating year from the Art Institute, my 15th quarter there, I had to write a paper for my Human Anatomy class, which was titled, How Music Affects the Human Brain. Have you ever wondered how music affects the human brain and what results from that interaction? Music is such a powerful tool and has been here for as long as there has been culture to cultivate it. From singing and dancing to using it for religious ceremony, one way or another, music has an effect on us as a species. Music gives humans something that no other medium can. It has the ability to provide so much in regard to learning, healing, spirituality, and pleasure/relaxation. However, for as much as it provides, it can also take away. This results in such things as music swooning, musical manipulation, musical seizures, and musical hallucinations. In regard to learning, they say knowledge is power. The more you know, the greater expansion that happens within your brain. You might be wondering, when in reference to learning, what's expanding in the brain? Well, within the human brain, there is something known as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to change its structure and function. In this case, the brain changes more specifically when you are given a certain task to perform. Music helps with plasticity of the brain, both functional and structural. Functional plasticity deals with more so the body's hand-to-eye coordination and how it performs the task at hand. Earlier musical training results in greater hand-to-eye coordination. It would seem that functional plasticity deals more with the growth and stimuli of the other parts of the brain, aside from gray matter growth, and dealt more with sports. Structural plasticity deals more with the brain's development when performing or observing a task. As a result of this, the gray matter grew and formed due to its increase in brain function from playing music. Both created greater motor control for the individual. And at this point, I have in parentheses quoted Yang Min Cheng, or put him there to refer to the source that I used for that information in regard to functional plasticity versus structural plasticity and how it affects the brain. As the music allows more plasticity of the brain, both structural and functional, it also creates a sense of pleasure. Pleasure allows our mind to release dopamine, which creates the experience to be that much more intense. When people listen to certain kinds of music, they usually get something known as the chills, and which directly correlates with our pleasure receptors. In regard to this feeling, a study was performed to find out what pieces of music would give the subject the chills. This in turn created an immensely pleasurable experience for the subjects. Out of the 5 male students and 5 female students chosen from McGill's University, each of the subjects selected a classical piece as their music of choice. Yang Ming Chen said, quote, regions associated with reward/motivation circuitry such as ventral striatum, dorsomedial midbrain, amygdala, and hippocampus were found to correlate with chills intensity, but not with the more mildly pleasant emotion associated with consonance. We have shown here that music recruits neural systems of reward and emotion similar to those known to respond specifically to biological relevant stimuli, such as food and sex, and those that are artificially activated by drugs of abuse. This is quite remarkable because music is neither strictly necessary for biological survival or reproduction, nor is it a pharmacological substance. Activation of these brain systems in response to a stimulus as abstract as music may represent an emergent property of the complexity of human cognition, perhaps as formation of anatomical and functional links between phylogenetically older, survival-related brain systems and newer, more cognitive systems increased our general capacity to assign meaning to abstract stimuli, or capacity to derive pleasure from these stimuli also increased. The ability of music to induce such intense pleasure and its putative stimulation of endogenous reward systems suggests that although music may not be imperative for survival of the human species, it may indeed be a significant benefit to our mental and physical well-being. End quote. With this experiment, it showcases the idea that humans have a certain need or a want for music, even if it isn't a necessity. That's a pretty powerful thing. With pleasure comes a certain sense of healing. Healing with music can be pretty advantageous. In the majority of cases of those with disorders and certain diseases, music can be very beneficial. Those with disorders such as Parkinson's disease are able to listen to certain types of music and are able to fall into a relaxed state in which they couldn't normally do. However, listening to types of music with more percussion would result in them becoming hyper and would increase the tension of their condition. Oliver Sacks said, the eminent and now Parkinsonian composer Lucas Foss, for example, whom I saw recently, may festinate or rock it almost controllably to his piano, but once he is there, can play a Chopin nocturne with exquisite control and timing and grace, only to festinate or freeze once more as soon as the music ends. Music is profoundly important to those with motor disorders. Through the music must be of the right kind, suggestive, but not peremptory, or things may go wrong. For one of my deeply Parkinsonian post-encephalitic patients, Francis D., music was as powerful as any drug. 1 minute I would see her compressed, clenched, and blocked, or else jerking, ticking and jabbering, like sort of a human time bomb. The next minute, if we played music for her, all these explosive, obstructive phenomena would disappear, replaced by a blissful case and flow of movement, as Miss D, suddenly freed of her automatisms, would smilingly conduct the music or rise and dance to it. But it was necessary for her that the music be legato, for staccato, percussive music might have a bizarre counter effect, causing her to jump and jerk helplessly with the beat, like a mechanical doll or marionette. End quote. Therapeutically, this power can be striking in people with autism or frontal lobe syndromes, who may otherwise have little access to strong emotional states. Music can help greatly with people that have Alzheimer's disease, bringing them back to a richer time in their life. It can bring back memories and give them a sense of greater cognition in which they wouldn't be able to do on their own. Oliver Sacks said, while music creates many positives for those who have health-related issues, it can also do the opposite. Turns out music might have an impact that isn't so glorious, but rather annoying and bothersome. To start, musical hallucinations can occur in people that have disorders of the brain, as well as those that don't. There are a number of patients who have had seizures that involve hearing or hallucinating sounds of music. One patient by the name of Eric M. states that he hears an all too familiar haunting music and realizes that it is a seizure, but doesn't want to linger on it too long in fear of it putting him in a trance-like state, which would be out of his hands. End quote. There is also another phenomenon known as musical manipulation. Concerts are a great example of this. The stage, the lights, and especially the sounds create a sense of quote-unquote musical swooning. This is when people become mesmerized to the point of being in a trance-like state due to the music that is being played. Elvis Presley was a great example of this, having crowds swooning to his music as if caught in a trance. While music can create a trance-like state, it can be beneficial for spiritual purposes. Spirituality in itself is something as humans we long to figure out and use as a way for some to feel a greater purpose in life, as well as gaining a sense of fulfillment. Music creates a trance-like state in which goes hand in hand with a religious ceremony. Music, like religion, has been dated for just as long, if not longer, and has hypnotizing-like effects. Oliver Sacks said, music can also be profoundly evocative, have deep resonances without being familiar and without calling up specific memories. In tormented or deeply demented people, it can bring them a sense of tranquility or at least some clarity. End quote. It can create an uplifting feeling with correlation to the uplifting feeling one might get from religious texts and teachings. These go well together in the example of hymns one might sing at a church or in other gatherings. When you are in a community setting like this, singing and dancing allows the person to gain a higher sense of self. This in turn can give people a sense of a higher state of mind when music is combined with religious doctrine. Needless to say, music is an amazing device. It has its pros, capabilities to heal, emote, create pleasure, create a sense of greater spirituality, and being used to promote learning to change our brains in a positive way. While we can't forget the cons. Musical hallucinations, musical seizures, and musical swooning. Music, like humans, has a many variety and types, and is changing every day. This might be why music and humans are so compatible. Therefore, for better or worse, I think we could agree that as long as there is music, there will be humans to listen. Well, guys, that was the paper I wrote again, dealing with music and how it affects the human brain. This was a paper that I wrote back in the year of 2014, May 28th. But that was the final term paper I had to write. The bibliography for this will be in the comments section below underneath this video. So just to let you guys know of the citing of sources that I used to write this paper. Well, I'd like to give you guys another story here of how I got into several of the bands that I'm going to talk to you guys about today. It was during the time when my dad had met my stepmom, Alnona. And when they were dating in the beginning, I would go over to my stepmom's house, and she had two older sons named Kyle and Alex that were living with her at the time. Kyle was about my age, and Alex was about 3 years younger than me. So what ended up happening during that time was that they would have different times in which they would have their music playing. They would be playing multiple bands in which I had never listened to before. Up to that point, I had only listened to certain types of music dealing with alternative rock, and that was essentially the main gist of it, aside from Billy Joel and Elton John. And they had introduced me to bands such as 3 Days Grace, Slipknot, Panic at the Disco, and Finger 11. Also Disturbed as well. I had known about Disturbed before, listening to them through when I would go over my dad's house over the weekends, but it was not that often, and they really got me into those bands. Both of my stepbrothers, I love them to death, and also Korn as well. So some good bands there. Again, 3 Days Grace, Slipknot, Panic at the Disco, Finger Eleven, as well as Disturbed and Korn. And I had heard some hardcore music before, or at least I thought it was dealing with Hybrid Theory, which is one of Linkin Park's earlier albums. Several songs off of there, they're just, screaming, and there's, loud percussion in the background and yelling into the mic. But when I had first heard Slipknot and the song Duality, that was hardcore. I was like, wow, these guys are intense. And I remember watching the video for it, and then that was the first time I had saw, all of them with these various looking masks, on, and I just was like, wow, this is so cool. And at that time, I had never listened to them before, and I wasn't really into that type of scene. So that was just a really neat experience. And I like a lot of their songs, even today. Psychosocial. I'm sure they've come out with newer albums. Psychosocial. Yeah, great group. Something again that it was just so interesting because, my stepbrother Kyle was really into them at the time, and I just never had even thought to listen to them. And I'd heard of them, I'd heard about them, but I had never, really listened to, a metal group like that, and metal rock group. And the Korn was similar to that, similar type of look and feel, as well as Disturbed. But I had actually heard of those bands before, Slipknot, but that was just one of the bands. Yeah, they're really cool. I was glad to be introduced to that band from my stepbrother. So there was another instance that I had back when I was in the dorms at the Art Institute, shortly before I had moved out from the dorms. There was a gentleman by the name of John who I had been rooming with at the time, and he and I were one day we were jiving about video games and what shows we liked on TV, and also we started jiving about music, and he ended up pulling out this black zipped closed CD case with just pages and pages of different artists that he'd been collecting over however long he'd been collecting them. And he had asked me if I knew of the group Five Finger Death Punch, and I said, no, I haven't heard of that group. And he goes, you never heard of Five Finger Death Punch? And I was no, I never have. And he's like, oh man, he's like, we got to listen to him. So then he put on one of their CDs he had, and they sounded really, really cool. It was like a new age rock, something I hadn't really heard before. And this was back, in the year of 2011 to 2012. And, after that, I started listening to them pretty much every day. And they really, really resonated with me, at the time, some things that, I had going on in my own life and things I was going through, and just their message. And, they were also, sort of yelling into the mic, and, but the lead singer would also sing as well. So it was a combination of both of those ways of, acting in the band or sounding in the band. And there's one song in particular that I want you guys to hear. It's called House of the Rising Sun. Originally, this song is from the group The Animals. And so without further ado, I give you House of the Rising Sun from myself as a cover of the original artist, The Animals, but covering Five Finger Death Punch version of House of the Rising Sun. Here it is. There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many poor boy, and God, I know I'm one. My mother was a tailor. She sewed my new blue jeans. My father, he was a gambling man down in New Orleans. Now the only thing a gambler needs is a suitcase and a trunk. And the only time he's satisfied is when he's all drunk. Oh, mother, tell your children not to do what I have done. Spend your lives in sin and misery in the house of the rising sun. Well, I got one foot on the platform, the other foot on the train. I'm going back to New Orleans to wear that ball and chain. Well, there's a house in New Orleans they call the rising sun, and it's been the ruin of many poor boy. In God, I know I'm one. Introducing a new section called Ken's Karaoke. As part of the What is your favorite type of music, or what type of music do you like section. Every once in a while, you'll hear on one of these podcasts, yours truly doing a cover of a song. Well, guys, I hope you were entertained by that. And speaking of entertainment, it's time to move over to our final section here. What entertains you, or what do you like to do for entertainment? Oh, Netflix. You're one of the greats, in my opinion. You have so many shows and great movies. And for that matter, also Amazon Prime Video or Amazon Video. If you guys have an Amazon Prime subscription, or you watch any like to watch any movies or really cool shows, check out Amazon Prime Video or Amazon Video. It's a great way to see other films, especially if the Netflix doesn't have it, then Amazon Prime Video will have it, at least for the most part. As of lately, on Netflix, there's this show called The 4400. It's really cool, actually. It's one of those shows where you're just kind of browsing through Netflix. You're thinking, oh, like, what else can I watch, today? I've seen, everything. I've watched this, I've watched that. And then you start browsing through and just start, seeing different other shows. And that happened to be the one that I've stumbled upon, The 4400. It is about essentially a fairly large group of people that have all been taken from their different times or eras of time and essentially transported to the future. And then from there, they are transported actually back on a lake in the main town in which you follow most of these characters in. And during that time, there's a news broadcast going on. And all of a sudden, essentially, in just a ball of light that comes down from the sky, it begins to glow larger and larger and larger, and then essentially it just does a huge, explosion, and then there are just thousands of people basically standing on the beach near where this lake is, and you find out, later in the show that all of the people that had come back are endowed with certain special powers. And each episode essentially goes through whom that person is and which time frame they're from, which era of time they're from, and then you see what ability they've been endowed with. So, super cool show, guys. If you get a chance to check it out, it's on Netflix. It's called The 4400 again. It's one of those shows you could just keep binging and binging, kind of like Law and Order, all the different types of Law and Orders that are out there, where you're just like, man, this is just like, so good. You want to keep watching it, more and more each time that you see an episode. You want to keep following the characters, seeing what happens, seeing how they're intertwined, and, all the different, things that are secrets in the show. And it has a great plot. Apparently, this show had actually come out in the year 2004 and spanned to the year 2007, but due to there not being enough people that were following the show, they actually canceled the show. Okay, guys, another thing that entertains me is actually cat memes, specifically ones where the cat is happening to be sitting on a glass table, and I saw this one particularly where, essentially you're looking from the bottom view underneath the table, and you see the cat, like its legs and it's like, its fur underneath, and as it's sitting on this glass table. And what someone had done is taken that shot of that cat, cropped it out, and then essentially they created it to look like a cloud, a cat cloud, and then they ended up putting it into like a sky and over like a park or something like that, and then they just multiplied the cats all over the sky, and it just made me die. I was rolling for like 5 minutes, I think, the first time when I saw that. I don't know what it was. They just make me crack up. I think in general, cat memes make me crack up. I'm a huge fan of cats myself, and they do sometimes do the darndest things. So just seeing that, if you guys ever get a chance to check it out, just look up like cat cloud meme or cat that looks like a cloud meme. And you'll find it, and I think you'll have a good time, and enjoy looking at it and have a laugh or two. Another thing that's entertaining to me are these videos from a company called Spitting Image. They're on YouTube. They're basically dealing with Donald Trump, Mike Pence, Joe Biden, and others in the political sphere. And the one episode I saw is how Donald Trump got COVID. So in these videos, they are very well made, and my hat goes off to the artists that have created the characters in these videos, because essentially it is like a mix between how they really look and in real life, and then also in Muppet form. They essentially merge them together in that way. And just in that particular episode, how Donald Trump gets COVID, essentially what happens is he goes into the lab where they're pretty much creating the vaccine, and it's him and Mike Pence, and they walk in, and he's talking to the main female scientist that's in there, and they start to talk further about COVID and how it's going in the vaccine. And one of the parts that happens is that he ends up, she's explaining what the vaccine is, and dealing with like how it helps kill COVID, and then Donald Trump goes, "Pence, mansplain that to me," and then Pence tells him in the most like basic terms and like layman's terms, and so and then there's another part in there where his hair ends up coming off of his head, and it's essentially like it has its own body and form, and it's like running around. It's just really kind of wacky and sort of off the wall. And at one point in time in the episode, he gets shrunken down to the size of a coronavirus microscopically, and he starts talking to it, and he goes, Coroni, you got New York style. And he's like, he calls him Coroni. It's just hilarious. If you guys get a chance, it's from a company called Spitting Image. They're on YouTube, and they have many other videos aside from that one. It's pretty great. Yeah, it's just hilarious. Two other things, guys, that entertain me are playing Rummy. It's a lot of fun. I've been playing that game. Actually, I was introduced to playing that game from my dad and my grandmother. We used to play when we'd go over her apartment at that time when she was living on her own there. And also, I like to play Monopoly as well. Board games are a classic way to have fun with you and your family, or friends as well. Again, that game's a lot of fun to play. All right, guys, this is going to wrap up Ken's Good Vibes Podcast, Episode 2, Part 2. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next Sunday. All right. And again, alternative Sundays now. It's not going to be each Sunday. It's going to be every alternative Sunday. Hope you guys have a great day and evening. And I will see you next time on Ken's Good Vibes Podcast.